Vince has lost his damn mind.
Well, tell that to Fox and USA.
Sorry, there's no place for that in wrestling.
This is what pro wrestling is in 2020.
I'm a fan of old school wrestling, not this sports entertainment.
I just want pro wrestling to also be entertaining. I'm Mark.
I'm Rusty.
And this is Point Counterpoint. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the debut episode of Point Counterpoint. My name is Mark Lindsay, a.k.a. GotMark76. For those of you who may not know me, I am part of that Way Cool Wrestling show with DJB Productions. I also have my own YouTube channel, GotMark76, where I play a video game. Yes, I book a video game, WWE 2K19. I do the voiceovers, I do the play-by-play, I am the booker. The current season, I am redoing the year 1990. Well, this is my first live ever GotMark76 show, and I am joined by my tag team partner, Rowdy Rusty Loudermilk. Rusty, welcome to Point Counterpoint.
Hello, man. Let's get it on. It's nice to finally have somebody as a tag team partner, even if we disagree, because usually the people see me on that Way Cool Wrestling show Breakout, which is a fine show that gives you the news and all the updates on what's going on in the world of pro wrestling each week. However, it's only me, so it's nice to have a tag team partner to bounce some ideas off of. So we're going to have some fun, be crazy, and as Cowboy Bill Watts would say, if we can't get along, we got to get it on. Let's go, brother.
Well, I'm going to give you another Cowboy Bill Watts quote and say, let's hook them up. Our first topic of our program is the Money in the Bank. And that was this past Sunday, WWE's latest pay-per-view event held at the Performance Center, and the Money in the Bank match, of course, held at Titan Tower in Stamford, Connecticut. Rusty, one of my highs of that event was the WWE title match between Drew McIntyre defending against the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins. I've got news for you. Drew McIntyre is a believable champion. And if there's anybody I feel sorry for with this whole COVID-19 and no fans in the arena, it is Drew McIntyre. Those two men lit up that show. That was a great match. And the end of the match, where Drew McIntyre goes over on Seth Rollins, he demanded a handshake. And of course, Seth Rollins reluctantly agrees. They shake hands. And that's something you just don't see in pro wrestling anymore. Rusty, what were one of your highlights of Money in the Bank?
One of my highlights was the Jeff Hardy-Cesaro match, which most people probably didn't see because that happened on the kickoff show. Jeff wins, but both worked great. I mean, they used ladders and other obstacles and objects and things. But beyond that, even when they didn't use all of that, they had some really good wrestling moves. Some stuff off the top rope. Jeff Hardy has battled his demons with drug addictions and stuff, so I'm real happy that he's back to being the old Jeff Hardy that we once knew. But I was also happy for Cesaro because as an old school guy, for you new school, Mr. Mark, new school.
Don Morocco t-shirt, Rowdy.
I knew, not personally, but I knew of Cesaro as a fan when he was Claudio Castagnoli, I think.
Ring of Honor. Yep.
Yeah, Ring of Honor. And so I've been a fan of his long before he ever got to WWE. So I thought that was a high.
Well, that's awesome. You know, another highlight for me was Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman. And I, for one, thought that the right person won this match. You know, Braun Strowman was kind of thrown into the the Universal title picture. The Fiend was probably one of the hottest properties in professional wrestling, all brands. He has got a cult following, something similar to The Undertaker back in the early 90s. And Goldberg defeats The Fiend for the title, and then you're kind of stuck with a Hall of Fame wrestler who's past his prime carrying the top championship on the SmackDown brand. So they finally pull the trigger. They give Braun Strowman an opportunity at the Universal title. And then his first opponent is Bray Wyatt, who we all kind of wanted to see get the title back. Now, I found it interesting from a booking perspective that it was Bray Wyatt challenging and not The Fiend.
Normally, I like Bray Wyatt because what a lot of people don't know is Bray Wyatt is from the Wyndham and Rotunda family. Mike Rotunda's son and Blackjack Mulligan is his grandfather. And I'm old school, knew Blackjack Mulligan very well. So Bray Wyatt is a real good worker. But the Fiend character, Maniac Mark, with all your intelligence, you mean to tell me you like the Fiend? Come on, man. What's up with that?
In 2020, the characters can be like the Fiend, and we're going to talk a little bit later on about suspending disbelief. The Fiend, I think, represents PTSD. We have a lot of soldiers coming home from war, suffering from PTSD, and of course, you can get PTSD from many different situations in your life. And I think the Fiend is that personified. So, yeah, I do like the Fiend. I think there's a place for the Fiend when he wrestles, not when he has cheesy WrestleMania skits with John Cena.
I agree with you there. I was going to say that I don't have a throw-up bucket for the first episode. I'll have to get one for episode number 2. But since you said that, I don't think I'll throw up. There might be hope for you yet, Maniac Mark.
So, Rusty, what were one of your lows about Money in the Bank?
One of my lows were the falls off the building that wasn't really a fall off the building. I didn't see this during the show, but somebody told me that the WWE camera crew actually accidentally got a shot of the stuntman crash pad / trampoline that they were actually falling off of. Falling to from the makeshift wall. And so I went back and looked at it the next day on the internet where someone had it circled in another YouTube video. And it's like, oh man, now, Mark, you talk about a new school and times have changed. Mark, we got a multi-billion with a B, not an M, a B, Mark, a multi-billion-dollar company. Didn't your boy Kevin Dunn or your boy Vince McMahon, didn't they know if you're going to pretend to throw somebody off a building, but you really throw them onto a crash pad, not to show the damn crash pad, Maniac Mark?
You act as if I'm on the payroll. I had nothing to do with it. I was a fan, and I was just as disgusted by it as you were.
Oh, okay.
With that said, I was mad. I was in a text group with some friends, and I was saying how disgusted I was, and I know that you have something to say about that as well. But I was just disgusted by the fact that our intelligence was insulted. Again, we'll talk later on in the program about suspending your disbelief.
Sure.
I don't get why they had to do that.
I don't either. Can I ask you a question? Since I revealed here on the program that I actually saw the crash pad the day after the show rather than on the show, did they actually show it on the show, the crash pad?
They may have in an aerial shot, but the fact is, by the time they showed it, I didn't care.
Okay.
The match had started, like you said, the women started in the lobby, the men started in the weight room, and it was just a cluster F the entire time. And
yes,
the Royal Rumble and Money in the Bank are two of my favorite modern matches, and they just whatever. The more I talk about it, the more I'm going to aggravate my ulcer.
And I get so tired of people saying, well, that's what you get when you got like 33 writers. It's either 30 or 33. I don't know the exact number for the viewers here, but somewhere around 30-ish writers on the payroll, some of which have done comedy for Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Fallon and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, no matter whether it's one writer or whether it's 30 writers. First of all, wrestling's got to be booked, Mark, booked, BOOKED, Mark, booked, not written. But second, go ahead.
No, finish your point.
But second, even if you're going to have the 30 writers on the payroll, at the end of the day, the person solely responsible, and this is what new fans of this program and old fans and any fan of WWE has to realize, at the end of the day, the final approval lies with Vincent Kennedy McMahon Jr. He has been known, you know this, Mark, you've been around for a while, he has been known to let the writers write the whole damn show from segment 1 to segment 13 on Monday Night Raw, and then all of a sudden, I don't like that shit, write it over. And so
absolutely.
And so at the end of the day, even though I'm old school and hate the writers, I don't blame the writers. I blame Vince McMahon Jr.
Well, let's stay on that topic, Rusty, and let's blame Vince McMahon Jr. a little bit more because, as we kind of touched upon earlier, Rey Mysterio Jr. and Aleister Black were thrown off the building. Now, I got to tell you, Rusty, there are rumors running rampant that Rey Mysterio's time in WWE may be coming to an end. And that would have been a great way to write him off. I mean, I would have hated it, don't get me wrong. But the fact that he showed up again the very next night on Raw kind of made me shake my head.
Yes.
But you had an interesting point off air, and I'd like to give you some time to go into that, about why it's in bad taste to even pretend to throw people off of a building.
Well, the reason why it's in bad taste is I try to dodge the rundown here on the show here without wiggling. There I am. I'll talk about that part of it in a minute. But the reason why it's in bad taste is because in 1999, for those of you that may not remember, Owen Hart fell from the rafters of the Kansas City, Missouri arena in a stunt-like type of entrance where he was to fight the Godfather. You know, pimping ain't easy, baby. Pimping ain't easy. And long story short, Owen Hart, during the show, before the entrance, climbed up to the catwalk, got ready in a dark arena, got hooked up by riggers, the same type riggers that would have hooked up Sting in WCW. And I think they also did Mary Poppins or other type of stage shows. But as it came out, the hook was to hold fishes and stuff like that. It was not made to hold a 230-pound man, especially in a dark arena. So WWE got sued. I think it was like $18 million to $30 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. And Martha Hart and others won a lawsuit. And that's what led to the venom that's now between the Hart family and WWE. And that's why Owen Hart may never be in the WWE Hall of Fame, because Martha Hart is angry with Vince, rightfully so. And so I thought that Vince, for one time in his miserable life, would never do anything like that again. And when I see this Money in the Bank throwing Rey Mysterio off the over the fictitious wall, or Aleister Black or anybody else, it just brings back the Owen Hart stuff, and it doesn't bring back good memories, not only for me or anybody else that remembers that particular incident in 1999. And so everybody should be appalled. If I can ask you, Mark, what do you think about the whole thing?
Well, I remember that event very well. I was with my friends when that happened, and we were all shocked. And the fact that Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler could hardly keep their composure afterwards in crying, and basically JR having to tell the live audience that Owen Hart had passed. I definitely see this is where I will be old school with you, and then that is the fact that I didn't think there was any place for that. Even if there was a secondary roof and Baron Corbin threw Ray and Black onto that roof, which is how they explained it the following night on Raw, there's just not a place for that. That's not cool. That's not something people want to see, especially with somebody who's as important to the Hispanic market as Rey Mysterio, and somebody who's as important to the up-and-coming fans in Aleister Black. Aleister Black has a cult following, much like The Fiend, where his character is dark and mysterious, and had a lot more success in NXT than he has had on Monday Night Raw. And there is a large audience out there who probably wanted to see Aleister Black win the Money in the Bank to begin with and kind of elevate his career, and he's being tossed off a roof. So from a booking perspective, it sucked, and from a realistic standpoint, it sucked. So I was not entertained by that in the least.
No, and if I were Martha Hart or any Hart member, and I doubt that any of them watch, certainly WWE, if they watch any wrestling at all. I don't know them personally, so they may or may not. But if they do, I'm sure that if they were here, they would say that was in bad taste. But once again, Vince forgot about what happened in 1999. And even if you can suspend your disbelief and say, okay, 1999 was a horrible accident and nobody meant to do it. I never said anybody meant to do it. I just meant that since it happened, you shouldn't do anything remotely like that again that might bring those memories back up for anybody. And they did that by doing this, number one. And number two, it didn't do anything for Aleister Black or anybody or Rey Mysterio either from a character development standpoint, even if you take the Owen Hart stuff out of it.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Speaking of bad taste, we're going to move on to AEW, which is one of my favorite promotions. I thoroughly enjoy watching AEW. Last week, there was an uneasy moment where Jake the Snake Roberts mounted Brandy in the middle of the ring, Rusty.
Yes.
We're trying to get over the fact that Cody Rhodes and Lance Archer are in the finals for the TNT Championship. That match will take place May 23rd at Double or Nothing. But at the end of the day, it was Jake Roberts who got the heat on Cody Rhodes and not Lance Archer. What do you think about that?
True. Well, let me say this two ways. I disagree with the snake and the what I call on Breakout my show dry humping. But I'll put that aside for a minute. You're absolutely correct, Mark. If you're going to do the dry humping and the snake, which I think didn't really help, but if you're going to do it, have at least Lance Archer do it so that Lance Archer gets the heat, because at the end of the day, Cody is wrestling Lance Archer. He's not wrestling Jake. Now, if you want to have Jake in there and have the snake dangling somewhere in the background, or if you want to have Jake put the snake on Brandy after the dry humping, if it should have been done at all. But if it was going to be done, it should have been done by a Lance Archer to elevate the feud between Lance Archer and Cody, because Jake's not going to be in the match.
I agree. And I think how I would have liked to have, I would have done most of it. I would have probably taken the dry humping out.
Yes.
But I think that could have been, and we don't know that for sure, Jake the Snake acting on his own. I mean, I don't know if that was part of the script or not. I think the only thing I would have changed is having Jake. I would have had Jake put the snake on Brandy. That's Jake the Snake's character, and that's something we haven't seen in over 20 years. Is a snake on a wrestler. Sure. I was okay with that. I just wish that Lance Archer had more to do getting heat on himself for that big match. And maybe AEW doesn't feel that Lance Archer needs the heat because they think that he's good enough on his own to be in that match. But maybe they just thought that Jake the Snake doing that was going to pass the heat on to Lance, and I think that failed miserably. I think that if I'm Cody Rhodes, I'm going after Jake, not Lance Archer.
True. I agree with you. I know this is counterpoint, but that's one thing we agree on. But you also have to remember, Maniac Mark, is that 3 of the 4 vice presidents, well, first of all, I don't even know why you got 4 vice presidents in AEW. That's too many cooks in the kitchen there. But what do I know? But
well, wait,
3 of the
Rusty, as long as one of those cooks is not Vince McMahon, I'm okay with it.
well, that's true too. Yeah, I agree with you there. That's another point we agree on. But 3 of the 4 cooks are from or support that Southern California wrestling scene, in which some of that over the top stuff that PWG, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, or some of the other lesser known promotions out there do those kind of over the top things. And that's where the Young Bucks came from. And so I think that they just have to get that out of their system. I'm not sure they ever will. That might be a little bit of a negative on AEW. But I noticed when they since several months ago they've hit their stride and done some really good shows, and some of the best shows have been during this pandemic situation, because they've had no choice but to leave some of the fluff or some of the entertainment, as you call it, Mark. And to quote Brian Danielson, aka Daniel Bryan, there's only so much bad television you can watch, and make me vomit. But anyway, go ahead.
All I'm going to say is I'm okay with entertainment as long as I want entertaining wrestling. I don't want just the sport of pro wrestling. You need a little bit of entertainment. You need a little slapstick. It's been part of wrestling for as long as I've been alive.
You were okay with the Bubbly Bunch?
I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, I was okay with it. Because you know what? Chris Jericho, he's brilliant. And Chris Jericho is very entertaining. And I like the rub that he's giving those younger talent. I guess Santana and Ortiz, Sammy Guevara.
Yeah.
He's giving those guys a rub. And so far, Chris Jericho is the MVP of AEW. And Cody's a close second. But Jericho's MVP of AEW for the first year that they've been around.
I'd like to clear something up. I'm a big Jericho fan, past and present, and I'm a big fan of that faction. I'm just not a fan of the Bubbly Bunch skits. That's my point.
Moving on. Rusty, we're going to stay in AEW, but we're going to switch topics.
Okay.
Brody Lee, the exalted one of the Dark Order, has stolen the AEW championship from Jon Moxley, and it was announced that he'll be defending the AEW title against the exalted one at Double or Nothing. My question to you is, now, Brody Lee has a lot of talent. He's a talented big man wrestler. Didn't really get his fair push in WWE. But do you think it's too soon for someone like him to be challenging the AEW champion after being there for only a month?
Yeah, but I agree with you. It is too soon. But there again, too many cooks in the kitchen. You should be pushing him, and pushing him hard, but not for the AEW championship. What I think should have happened, I mean, Cody has had an on-again, off-again feud with MJF. Cody's had feuds with Darby. He's in the middle of sort of a semi-feud with Darby Allin. If you're going to give someone a push for the AEW title, why not give a Darby Allin or someone else? Brody Lee just got, nothing against Brody Lee, or WWE fans know him as Luke Harper, but he's only been there for a cup of coffee. You got plenty of other people in the dressing room, both baby faces and heels, who have been there longer than that. Push one of them.
We know Brody Lee, like you said, Luke Harper in WWE, but he was also in Ring of Honor as Brody Lee, which is where I first saw him wrestle. And I've been a fan of this guy for a long time, but I like the fact that they're letting his character develop in AEW.
Yes.
I definitely saw him or see him as a world title contender. My only fear is that there's a large audience who only knows him as Luke Harper. And
Sure.
Luke Harper's character in WWE was that of a follower. He followed Bray Wyatt. He was in the Wyatt family, and he was part of a tag team with Eric Rowan. He wasn't really somebody who was on his own.
So basically what you're saying is they need to do a better job of developing him now as a totally different man, sort of independent. of the
I think
WWE character.
they've done a great job of doing that, but it's too short. I think
Yes.
if you had done that for 3 or 4 months and then put Brody Lee into the world title picture, I would
Yes.
have zero problem with it. But I don't realistically expect the world title to change hands in 2 weeks.
No,
You
and
just gave
if
it to
it
Moxley.
sure, I agree. I didn't mean to walk on you there, Mark.
It's
I
okay.
agree. I agree with you. I don't realistically expect it to change, and if it does, that'd be even worse. I also think that Brody Lee needs to calm down with the Vince McMahon parodies in the boardroom. If you want to cut a promo in the middle of the ring and take a dig at Vince McMahon the way Eric Bischoff did back in WCW, that's fine. But as far as filming vignettes or taping vignettes, ever how you want to say it, and Brody Lee dropping in hints or phrases that Vince McMahon would use, that's kind of defeating the purpose. If anything, he should try to run away, as you just said, from the WWE landscape and make a new footprint in AEW. And from a long-term perspective, I think, to use a Dustin Rhodes phrase, I think Vince McMahon better watch his ass, because AEW is really, as you said off air one night when we were talking, AEW has hit its stride since about January, I think you said.
We're going to move on to a feature we're going to do every week. It's called the Old School Corner. And what we're going to do is you had seen us mention earlier throughout the show the term suspend disbelief.
Yes.
I am 43 years old. I started watching wrestling, and cue Rusty's laughter here. Mr. T being Hulk Hogan's partner at WrestleMania 1 is what got me hooked on wrestling. I didn't watch wrestling prior to 1985, but I did know who B.A. Baracus was, and I knew that the A-Team and Mr. T was going to team with Hulk Hogan, so I had to watch it. It was that match which got me hooked. And throughout the years since 1985, we had Lasertron in the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions. We had the Honky Tonk Man, an Elvis impersonator. We had Outback Jack from Australia. We had all these cartoon-like characters in the mid to late 80s. And we were able to we were able to say, okay, that may not be Ric Flair. That may not be Roddy Piper. But this guy's fun to watch, or this guy's entertaining. And we were able to separate the two.
Yes.
But there's a difference between 1986 and 2020 where they're throwing guys off of a building roof. Yes. Rusty, what are some of your biggest issues with suspending disbelief in the year 2020?
Well, I think to what you said, for the new fans, go back and check out Lasertron on YouTube. And Lasertron was actually Hector Guerrero of the Guerrero family. And so even though he was a cartoon character, Hector Guerrero, the wrestler, was a hell of a wrestler. So that's why I didn't mind Lasertron.
Hector Guerrero was also the gobbledygooker. So make sure you look that one up too.
Oh, God, you had to remind me. Woo! I thought you were going to let me forget that maniac, Mark, you new school fool. Oh, okay. Now that I've regained my composure, I'm having a hard time suspending my disbelief that Jake Roberts is dry humping Brandy and putting a snake all over Brandy, but yet Cody doesn't appear there. And they did a good job explaining that, saying, well, Daly's place where it was taped, or where the show was the other night, is connected to the Jaguar Stadium, and you have to have a golf cart. But one of the things they forgot to realize is this stuff is fixed. And so because it's fixed, you could already have Cody there. Don't even mention that there's a golf cart involved. Have Cody come running in like he come running in out of the dressing room and kick Jake Roberts and Lance Archer's ass. You follow me? So I had a hard time believing that another man, especially a devious character like Jake Roberts and a murder hawk like Lance Archer, who's just, and by the way, I'm a Lance Archer fan in AEW, but I just have a hard time suspending my disbelief, thinking here is Cody's wife in the middle of the ring, getting dry humped by Jake Roberts, getting a snake put on her, and her husband doesn't even come out there and make an attempt to save her. Something's wrong with that, buddy.
I agree 100%.
And even if you didn't want him to come out there, as I said on that Way Cool Wrestling Show Breakout yesterday, which is up on YouTube, you could have at least cut a promo, since it is fixed. Cut the promo at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, since you know what's going to go on the show, and have Cody say, Jake Roberts, next week I'm coming to kick your ass. Because you have made this personal, Jake Roberts. This is not about wrestling wins and losses and titles and wins and losses matter, or the executive vice presidency or whatever. This is my wife. You crossed a line, man. I'm coming to kick your ass. Why couldn't Cody say that? Even if it was pre-recorded 3 hours before the original angle happened, nobody else would know that unless you told them.
Absolutely. Great point, Rusty. You know, one thing that I wanted to discuss as well, it's on our next topic here, is the selling of WWE stock. Now, Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon, and Kevin Dunn, the executive...
He's the executive vice president of television production.
There you go. Kevin Dunn, McMahon, and Stephanie all selling stock. Rusty, is WWE for sale?
I can't tell you they're for sale, but I can tell you that if any McMahon is selling WWE stock where somebody else other than McMahon can buy that stock that they're selling, that McMahon, whether they admit it or not, assumes that either now or somewhere down the road, even though it hasn't leaked out to the public yet, WWE will be sold. I never thought I said on Breakout yesterday, I never thought I would say that WWE might not be in the hands of somebody named McMahon. But when you have Vince McMahon selling $300 million, or some say $300 million, some say less than that, some say more than that, $300 million of WWE stock to fund the XFL, which now has gone bankrupt for those of you that didn't know. And then you have Stephanie selling $1 million of it just this past week. And then you have Kevin Dunn selling stock as well, only a couple days either before or after Stephanie. Have you ever heard the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire? There's got to be something there that we're not being told yet. But I guarantee you, as soon as we both track it down, we'll report it right here on this show.
Well, Rusty, I think it goes further back than just this, and we absolutely will report this. Back in February, there was a falling out with George Barrios and Michelle Wilson.
I forgot about that, but you are correct. The administrative vice presidents or whatever they were. Yes. Financial officers or whatever.
And George Barrios was the one who always held he was always the moderator for the conference calls when they would have their stock calls quarterly. And I got to tell you that was prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. And they were let go, and there was a lot of rumors back then that they were going to sell to ESPN, and that maybe ESPN was going to do something similar to what the UFC did, which is have a monthly subscription plan and then charge $40 or $50 for each pay-per-view. And that has now crept back into my mind because those two were released. Look, you said it earlier. There's one person who makes the decisions in WWE. His name is Vincent McMahon. And when Vince McMahon wants something, he gets it.
Wait a minute. Let me stop you there. Other people might make the decisions, but I said the final decision is Vince McMahon. Let's make that clear. Final decision.
And I'm going to trump you. If he wants something, he's going to get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I both admire and hate Vince McMahon all at the same time because you can't be a fan of this business and not appreciate some of the things he's done. but you also can't be a fan of this business and not give the guy a hard time for some of the things he's done. So with that said, it makes me wonder where
I
WWE
agree.
would be if there was no COVID-19 pandemic. Would they have sold already?
I agree with you. That I know this is supposed to be point counterpoint where we disagree, but this is another example. Cue Danny J from that Way Cool Wrestling show. We're agreeing, Danny.
He's not going to like that, Rusty. He wants to see
I,
competition here.
I know. He wants to see us go at it, but we're going to agree sometime. I agree with you, and you have to remember something. Since I'm a single guy, let me pause here for a minute, if you can, Maniac Mark, and tell the folks, in case they don't know, in case I wander over to the PTI type rundown ticker here. I am a guy in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy, which means I don't walk or stand, and sometimes I might wiggle to one side or the other. So forgive me if that happens. It's not a technical difficulty. It's a cerebral palsy difficulty. Having said that, let's get back to the topic at hand. Before Stephanie sold her stock, don't you think she went to Daddy either on the phone or in person or over the dinner table at Sunday dinner with Triple H, Paul Levesque, her husband there, and said, Daddy, I'm thinking about selling my stock. What do you think? If Vince McMahon wasn't thinking about selling the company either now or at some point, why wouldn't he say, Stephanie, I built this company to pass it down to you and Paul and our grandchildren, and I took it public so we could make it more profitable. You have enough money, dear. Keep the stock so you can keep control of the company once I'm gone. And so, to your point, Maniac Mark, I truly believe, I agree with you 100%. I think either A, if the COVID-19 thing had not happened, WWE would already be sold, or B, they thought it was going to be sold, or C, it's going to be sold in the future. Because why, if you're Stephanie and Triple A, I mean, Vince is on the tail end of his life, but unless something tragic happens, Stephanie and Triple H and their two children, they have two children, are supposedly going to inherit the company if it stays within the family. So why would Stephanie be selling some of her power that she could use down the road to keep from sort of a hostile business takeover? You see my point? So to your point, there's got to be something in the works somewhere that we just don't know as of this taping of the show, sir. I'm supposed to introduce the next topic. Alberto Del Rio, better known as Alberto El Patron, he got arrested this week for sexual assault, second-degree sexual assault, in which he told the woman, if you don't, basically, quote, allegedly, let's say that, allegedly, so we don't get in trouble with the lawyers, in trouble with Danny J or anybody else, allegedly told the woman, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to throw your son in the middle of the road. Now, this is the second time since 2017 that Alberto Del Rio, I forget his real name because I didn't have it wrote down for this show, but regardless, we'll just call him Alberto Del Rio for this show. This is the second time since 2017 that he's been involved in domestic disputes. The first time was in 2017 with his then girlfriend Paige of WWE, in which they got into a fight. She threw a drink in his face, and then after he got arrested, she recanted and said she started the fight and was the one under the investigation, not him, et cetera, et cetera. So, regardless of where you land on Paige's part of the whole thing, the fact that he has found himself in trouble again says to me the old school adage of sometimes these people believe they are 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I think he thinks because he's a celebrity and a pretty successful, famous pro wrestler, that he can do what he wants to do and doesn't have to abide by the same type of rules or regulations that you and I might have to do. So hopefully, as I said on Breakout, hopefully he'll get his life together and get some help. And hopefully these allegations turned out not to be true, but there are serious allegations, and evidence continues to mount. I know it's been a bad week, if I can say here. I can't see too good on the ticker, but this is not on the ticker. But it's been a bad week for pro wrestlers. But Patrick Clark, from the most recent Tough Enough show from many years ago, the African-American kid who wrestles now as Velveteen Dream, allegedly sent lewd photos to a minor of his penis and other photographs. And so with the Patrick Clark stuff and the Alberto Del Rio stuff, it's like, I realize you guys are celebrities and you are comic book heroes coming to life. But at the end of the day, you're still human beings and you need to act accordingly. And I just think sometimes when they get to a certain celebrity status, especially in wrestling, that they think they're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and they don't have to abide by the same rules as us. And I hope that it changes, because if it don't, you're going to continue to see story after story like this somewhere in the news.
I agree. And you said it earlier, where there's smoke, there's fire. So whether they're convicted of these allegations or not, their reputation will pay the price. And
yeah, and if I can interrupt you there for a minute, Mark, even if they're not convicted, if you're Tony Khan, okay, because let's be realistic. Even though I'm an NWA fan from the 80s and I'm a new school NWA fan with the Billy Corrigan regime, Billy Corrigan doesn't have he admitted he doesn't have the money of a Tony Khan yet. Billy Corrigan doesn't even have a cable TV contract yet. So Billy Corrigan can't offer the pay that a Tony Khan can or that a Vince McMahon can. So if you're a Vince McMahon or a Tony Khan, do you want to take a chance on an Alberto Del Rio, or El Patron, as you call him, his name in TNA, if he keeps getting in these scrapes? Because even if he's found not guilty, it's like, can you just shut the hell up and stay out of trouble for once?
I agree, Rusty. You know, we're going to end the show with some closing thoughts. And, you know, the fact is that we're all in this COVID-19 dilemma together. You know, we're all in this pandemic together. And this is the time where you shouldn't be in the news for stuff like sexual assault or sending penis pics. This is a time where you should be doing everything you can to better yourself for when we get past this pandemic and when you establish yourself in the business and in your role with the company. And one person who has established herself in this business and now out of it is one Becky Lynch. It was announced last night on Monday Night Raw that she is pregnant. We were hoping that Seth Rollins is the father. I believe he is.
Yeah.
And I just want to say on behalf of Point Counterpoint that we wish Becky Lynch the best, Seth Rollins the best. And, you know, she was the most over star in that company for the better part of a year. And now the meal ticket's gone. So Vince McMahon may not be happy that she's pregnant, but Becky Lynch is pregnant, and we just wanted to say congratulations. Rusty, what are some of your closing thoughts for today?
My closing thoughts are also congratulations to them. Get well wishes to a 1980s NWA wrestler, Thunderfoot #1, whose real name is Joe Deaton Jones. Thunderfoot #2, Gene Ligon, who also refereed many matches and was the referee for Starrcade 85, which was the Flair and Dusty match, in which Dusty appeared to win the NWA title, only to discover that he didn't later on. We'll talk about that on later shows. 85 was when somebody got thrown over the top rope, and Tommy Young was on the floor and said, I saw so-and-so get thrown over the top rope before Dusty pinned Flair.
That damn Tommy Young?
Yeah. Or I was going to say that damn Dusty booking, but that's another story for another day. Tommy Young, one of the greatest referees in the business.
Absolutely.
But secondly, only next to Aubrey Edwards. We'll talk about Aubrey on later shows, I'm sure. I'm an Aubrey mark. I admit that. If
talk about new school, huh?
Yeah, you got me there. But the other thing is, I just like realistic pro wrestling. And to give you an example of something that was not realistic years ago was the Mae Young giving birth to a hand. Now, Mark, come on. Even Mr. New School, as I said on Breakout, Mr. New School, Mark, we're going to have a program with Mr. New School. I can get your let's suspend our disbelief. But there's a difference.
I'm going to end the show with this comment right now, and we will talk about this next week on Old School Corner.
Okay.
There are lots of people who I see it all the time on social media, and I hear it in conversations with our friend Danny J, and that is that the Attitude Era was the best era of all. No, it was not. No. People forget how stupid and how horrible the Attitude Era was. They forget that we had title matches or title changes every other week. We had actors as world champion. We have hands given birth. We have Judy Bagwell on a pole match. We have all these things that people forget were how horrible they were. But the good outweighed the bad because you had stars like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, The Rock, Stone Cold, Mick Foley, Triple H.
Malenko.
Yes. And I won't mention the other guy's name because I'm just not there yet. But he too. And you had all those guys. And we will talk about that next week on Old School Corner because, no, you're right. I did not like giving birth to a hand, and I am not that new school, okay?
Okay. But I realize we're running long and we got to end the show, Mark, but we cannot end the show without saying this because this is topical. Those of you who follow NFL football may realize that Tom Brady from the New England Patriots and Rob Gronkowski, formerly of the New England Patriots, are now both with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The problem with that is when Gronk signed his contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he became property of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can tell him what to do, when to go, when to take a pee, basically, and what not to do to take a chance on injuring himself. So let me get this straight, Mr. New School Mark. We're supposed to believe that Rob Gronkowski, NFL star, first of all, is competent enough to be a pro wrestler. And then secondly, you give him, not you as in Mark, but the company, WWE, you give him the WWE 24/7 title, and now, oops, he's in the NFL, and you have no way as of right now, as of this taping of the show, to figure out how to get the title off of him. Am I just too much old school Rusty to think of this logical booking? Help me, Mark. Help me.
I'm going to help you by saying this. Who the hell cares about the 24/7 title?
Good point.
All right.
Or one for you.
Thank you for joining me on the debut episode of Point Counterpoint. I am Mark Lindsay. That is Rowdy Rusty Loudermilk. And we will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
I'll look forward to episode number 2. See you then, guys.
The proceeding was brought to you by GotMark76 in association with That Way Cool Wrestling Show. Please subscribe to GotMark76 and That Way Cool Wrestling Show on YouTube. And until next time, we'll see you at the matches.
I'm a fan of sports entertainment. Oh, no.